The vibe of the video today is to do it with the lights off. I don't know why, but I have this super bright page open to my right on my right monitor. So I thought, you know what? Let's have a nice little chill vibe. I used to have a candle when I do a video like this. Put the candle so you have the little flame light flickering. But other than that, welcome back to another video, ladies and gentlemen. Sending out a lot of love. We are back with the Conspiracy Theory Iceberg, Part 8, 1 of 3. Now, I like continue doing this and like doing one long video instead of doing my other requests. If you've seen now or recognized and noticed because of the whole throat thing. Pretty sure I'm going to have to get my tonsils removed soon. Don't know. But for the most part, I'm trying to preserve them for as long as possible. So I'm doing my best. Shout out to Wendigoon again, man. This series has been dope. And shout out to all of you. And try not to cough either. One comment that I appreciated so much, but I don't have open here. It's gonna get dark. Well, I can recall it from my mind, but it was something along the lines of they were too paranoid to watch this alone, so I gave them some sort of comfort in watching it, and I appreciate that so much. I hope to do that for many more people too, because like I said, you go down a certain rabbit hole with this, and you can, if like your mind, it's a weird thing, but I've handled this information so long that I just realized that most of it, you got to basically use your mind as a tool to break down most of it and not let it bother you on that scale. But I'm glad I could provide that. So let's hop in. My voice feels weird. I ran out of cough drops, but let's hop in. It's 6:37 a.m. when I'm shooting this. But all right, let's do this. Let's do this. That's my normal recording schedule anyway, 6 in the morning. All right, here we go. I'm ready.
Hello everybody and welcome to Tier 8 Part 1 of the Conspiracy Theory Iceberg. Now I know it's been a while and I'm so sorry. I'm sorry to keep you all waiting. College has been a lot, but the semester's out now and I am back in the saddle, ready to dive not only into this iceberg, but a bunch of other videos. So stay tuned, we're back at it. This summer I'll be doing a lot of cool video ideas, or at least...
Oh shoot, hang on. Oof, all right, let's keep going. Actually, I'm gonna get a drink real quick. I'm gonna get a drink. Just gonna make some tea, but I'm gonna get a drink and then I'm gonna come back. So give me 1 second. All right, now we're back. I have my water. Now we should be good to go. Long episode, all right.
I think they're cool. I hope you think they're cool too. And hopefully you enjoy what comes next. But for now, I know you want to get into this, and I want to get into it too. So as always, thank you for watching, and here we go. Tier 8 is titled The Reality Hacker, and the description reads, at extreme depths, the very structure of reality as...
Okay, so I think you remember the part of the video if you got all the way to the end where I read these. But at extreme depths, yeah, I know he's going to read it, but I'll let him read it, and then I'll read it.
You know it vanishes. Able to control the flow and having mastered the world and those around you, one last question remains. Can you master yourself?
So, funny enough with that, and I would love to drop that on this video, that's actually the whole purpose to life in general. And the purpose you even decided to incarnate on Earth in general. If you really want my side of things and just to keep it real with you, this is one thing that I super know for a fact and completely signed myself to the idea. It's the reason the Egyptians had know thyself in every single pyramid, because that's the only way of getting out of this game. Now, I don't want to say too much esoteric stuff in the beginning, but the reason it goes to this level, able to control the flow and having mastered the world and those around you, can you master yourself? Ultimately, if you master yourself, you end up being able to control your version of the flow state and those around you, and yada yada. Long story short. Now, other conscious beings you can't really control. They're their own consciousness, but you can manipulate the world around you. Blah, blah, blah. Also about tier 8. There was a funny thing I was going to say about but I'll leave it. There's some things that I want to leave for videos, and they'll give me. I know it's soon. See, because the whole thought process, like in the last one about this whole ideas are in this sort of bubble that we can all pick up from. It's like I'm like, damn, every time I think about something, because it's a crazy like clean idea in my version, but it'll always be unique because it's in my version, so I don't worry about it too much. But yeah, that's a big thing. The whole reality hacker thing is if you master yourself, master your mind, things like this won't even bother you, and you'll realize no matter how much of this conspiracy stuff is out there and any of that, it really shouldn't bother you anyways, because you need to just focus on things that help you master yourself. Maybe some of this does. Maybe it's your purpose to look into stuff like this. But other people really, yeah, I don't know. Thought I'd just drop that.
Depatterning is closely related to a concept known as psychic driving. Essentially, psychic driving works like this. It is a concept that by taking a person and making them listen to the same sounds and words and codes over and over, you can begin to work their personality backwards. This is all working off of the idea that a personality is developed by an individual over time and slowly built up as that person grows and matures, which means therefore you can deconstruct it. Or in other words, a means of unlearning learned behavior. There are records of this occurring during the MK Ultra experiments because of course there are. The theory was that showing someone specific visuals or making them listen to specific audio strands forward, backwards, and every other way will eventually cause them to begin to forget themselves. So that's psychic driving. Depatterning is everything I just said with electric shock therapy and LSD. Depatterning isn't only trying to reset someone's personality, it's also trying to dig all the way down to their subconscious. The idea being the combination of electric shock therapy and drugs could allow for the observer to speak to the bottom level of a person's psyche. Take that a step further, and some apply this concept to modern media, with the idea being there are very subtle tones and secret messages, and this is similar to backtracking, hidden in a lot of media we consume as a means of keeping us either docile or slowly chipping away at our higher order thinking.
Okay, so a funny thing with this, and what I will say is, I'll let him run through it and see if I don't forget my thoughts.
Or in other words, your mom was right. Too much TV fries your brain. Illuminati are the good guys.
Okay, that was it. So, funny enough, your parents are the first things to program you when you get to this world and continue to program you with, mind your manners, this, that, bunch of other stuff. But not to say some of that mind control is not good. Like some of it is definitely good. I think I talked about this before with the mind control of street lights. Mind control gets bad connotation, but it's the whole thing where if you've seen someone come across a red light, you would hope that mind control would work so that like they know red means stop and not red means hit the gas and go as fast as they can, like speeding past a stoplight. And it's all symbols and repetitions, and that's how the human mind is programmed. So it's the same thing with your parents when they tell you, oh, go to sleep at a certain hour, this, that, wake up for school, blah, blah. It's all programming. But the whole thing with patterning, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the thing that really could happen. But again, if anyone is scared of that like happening to you, I really believe that if you yourself has mastered, things like that can't happen to you. And like another weird, I actually just got done watching this video. I'm not even gonna lie, it's not something I researched on my own, but it was this guy talking about the science behind consciousness and how like it's like the reason when you're like a kid you have all these memories, like your mind is thinking way above your mind is like, I don't know, do any of you remember when you were a kid and it's almost like you were thinking more than you could do. Like you were like, oh, I want to grab this bottle, or like I wish I could jump up here or climb this, or like, yo, I know I could climb that, but you're like, like your body couldn't do it. It's like it's like your mind and your conscious blah blah was faster, way more accelerated, or yeah, it was this wild thing that he was talking about. And I remember being a kid thinking this too, like thinking like, oh shit, where the fuck am I? Like that, I talk about the meme where it's like randomly gaining consciousness at 3 years old, and that just made me think about the whole depatterning thing, I was like, well, I think like a personality and everything is pretty early. Like, I feel like it's there, then you get programmed by the world, and then your true self is hidden. Yeah, there's a lot about depattering that I can say. And then the whole television programming, I mean, it's literally in the name. It's called television programming. So, like, like I said, I brought this up about, like, not to be mean or not to be mean to anyone, but I say it about my own personal mom because it scares me when she would watch shows like this. But a big thing is, if your family, you could probably notice this pattern. Anyone tell me down below if this is the same for you. But in my family, it was a lot of psychological bullshit. So that's how I know, like, to go cipher how to maneuver through it, right? If you pick up on the pattern, you'll notice that, yeah, I'm just going to say it straight because I'm almost like not trying to say it to be mean. But if I come across mean, it is what it is. It's like the same people that caused that psychological trauma, it's almost like, what is it called? Like, are desensitized to it. So then they'll continue to watch things like soap operas or MTV or like these drama reality TV shows where the families are constantly fighting and shit because it's trauma. I don't know if I'll get demonetized for saying it, so I don't want to say it, but it's trauma RORN, basically. It's trauma ORN. So basically, you'll, like me, if you turn on those shows, like, I'll laugh and then I'll be like, I'm not gonna sit in a room and watch this bullshit because we sat here, like, the family's not supposed to sit here, but that's part of the whole trauma, like, healing from it. But then it's like, okay, knowing what you're not gonna take in, it's low vibrational shit. But that's pretty much the whole television programming thing. Is like, most likely you could almost find it in your family, and if you can't, try to find it in different ways. Maybe there's a certain pattern that you see your parents repeat, and then, like, yeah, the whole TV thing is bad. I see that mostly. I'm like, I never know how my mom likes to enjoy those shows when that was a lot of, like, the past stuff we went through, always infighting in the family, blah, blah, blah. And then you go and watch shows that reflect that same shit. It is the creepiest shit. And like comments have been on my videos, you step back from reality and you peep this stuff, and reality gets even weirder. Wow, that was a whole shit. God damn.
That is exactly what it says.
I gotta let Wendigoon talk for a good...
However, to get to the true meaning of it, you have to analyze the Illuminati itself.
Damn.
See, when the original Illuminati began, because it was an actual organization, in the 1700s, the idea was these French noblemen came together in order to start an organization that would allow for the people to more so govern themselves, or at least a small group of people to decide what happens to them. This was done by having members of the Illuminati infiltrate the government and proliferating the ideas that the group wanted across governments and peoples. However, if the original group standard of self-governance is it, then...
Okay, this Illuminati or the good guys thing is just funny, but I kind of wanted to say one more thing about that. It's the same with music too, and you can notice it in music. I'm pretty sure, I don't even gotta explain that one, but you can notice what music is programming people. But, okay, that's all I'll say next, and then I'll move on.
Maybe they're not necessarily as evil as we think they are. This theory is saying that maybe this organization's purpose was to make sure the government doesn't get too out of hand. And considering what governments have been capable of throughout history, perhaps there needs to be a group of people to keep them in check. So, therefore, all of the hate we know about them, or ideas of the Illuminati being evil devil worshippers, would be the result of centuries-long smear campaigns against the group proliferated by governments. And this demonization that they have done against the organization would be a means of making themselves seem the good guys in a historical context. The Illuminati, of course, assuming they do exist, would have to exist from the shadows and therefore cannot defend themselves openly. So think of it this way. If the Illuminati is real and they're working behind the scenes of world governments in order to proliferate this small group's idea, then who's to say they're the bad guys? Because, it's not like a government would lie to us about a group of people who they don't like. I mean, the government doesn't lie, guys. Like, come on.
I like how he said that, dude. I love how you did that. Thing about the Illuminati being good guys, if they were, it depends on what you believe in your eyes. But I think the biggest thing about that I would say is just screw the Illuminati. What they like, even paying attention to that group is, like I said, if it's in your purpose, I don't want to say that because I want to say to each their own. Maybe there's some dude that's alive that's watching this video right now that he was born for the sole purpose of bringing them down. But other than that, you shouldn't even worry about them. Like I said, goes back to the whole thing where it's like, if there are all these plots and schemes going down, it's not like a group of people are grouping up to go bring them down.
Elves refers to sightings that have happened across the world that before and after disasters, people have seen these small creatures at the site of the event. Historically, description of these things match up with
that's kind of like Mothman.
That of trolls and elves, either short, stumpy creatures that don't have human proportions, or these impossibly skinny figures that seem to dance across the rubble of whatever building just collapsed. The most famous examples of this being 9/11 and the Silver Bridge incident, which after both of them, several witnesses reported seeing small people crawling across the rubble. Theories of these creatures range from everything that they are these evil sort of demons that enact natural disasters in order to be bad, I guess, or that perhaps these things are
everything we don't understand is an evil demon. Did I say this before? I just want to make this so you just know this. I don't know if you guys know this, and I've said it in a video. Did you know demon and melanin are the same? They're the same word. Like, you can find traces of demon and melanin meaning the same thing. Just keep that in mind when you think about the word melanin and the origin of melanin and then demon.
Are summoned by
it's
the
crazy,
parties
right?
in question to get across whatever motive they want. Or perhaps these things are summoned by the parties that actually committed the disaster, because if you think about it, if you believe in demons and you think demon summoning's real, then who's to say that people wouldn't use those capabilities in order to do not so nice stuff? War is fake isn't saying that no war.
Demolition elves. That actually sounds pretty cool. Like, I actually like that one. I don't know why. I almost like want to look into that more. But yeah,
wars ever happen, just the motivations for them. A lot of this relates back to shadow organizations and things like the Illuminati, because if there's things that exist in the supernatural realm that the regular people don't know about, but these higher elitist rings do, then it makes sense that there would be battling of some kind over them. And if that's true, then several of the wars throughout history that we as the public know for being over money or land or what have you could actually be over these more important ideas. Like what I talked about a couple tiers back, the US didn't invade Iraq for oil, it was for the Stargate, obviously. I'm just gonna start like a history series on this channel where I take tragedies throughout history like wars and famines or whatever and make entirely baseless claims, like the plague, right? Those people weren't killed by a disease. No, it was giants and also Hitler. And then I'll just turn off the comments and say that anyone who disagrees with me is in on the conspiracy. YouTube's so fun. Tesseract, Earth, or universe is referring to the shape.
It is. The Tesseract? Isn't this like in Marvel or some shit? Is it DC? Is DC with the Tesseract? Fuck. What was I gonna say? Fuck it.
Shape of a Tesseract. So we understand the universe to exist in 3 dimensions, that being height, width, and depth, right? And this is often shown through the example of a square. If you have a flat square, that's 2-dimensional because it goes height and length. If you have a cube, that's 3-dimensional because it's height, length, and depth. The idea of a tesseract is that it is a 4-dimensional cube, which means it would exist in a 4th dimension that we can't directly observe. As you're probably aware, if you're at tier 8 of the iceberg at this point, there are several theories about different dimensions that we can't directly see as people, but they would still exist nonetheless. The most common of which being time and the idea that it can be manipulated. However, we existing as people can just pass through it at one pace in one direction. So the tesseract existing as a 4-dimensional square, when applied to the Earth or universe, implies that there is these greater 4th dimensional properties that we can't exactly understand. In other words, either the planet we live on or the universe we exist in is moving a lot more complexly than we can see, and perhaps anomalies, which could be everything from random explosions to supernatural sightings, could just be the result of these 4th dimensional occurrences that we can only catch glimpses of.
That's cool.
Oh boy, this one. So as soon as I started this iceberg and scrolled through it real quick, this was like the first one I saw, and I was thinking, There is no way I can do this, but I'm about to. Remember how in tier 2 of this iceberg, way back before I was a YouTuber and all, I talked about quantum suicide and immortality? The reason I spent so much time talking about it was to justify this one. In the theory of quantum suicide and immortality, it followed the idea that anything that can happen will happen in one branching universe. So if string theory is to be believed, and if the idea of these infinite universes is to be believed, then that means every possible outcome has to exist within one of these worlds, which, as I explained with quantum suicide and immortality, that means for every individual, there has to be a universe where they live at a theoretical forever, and a universe in which they commit not alive at every possible point.
Commit not alive, bro.
Forever and ever. So that means in one existing universe, there has to be a version where John F. Kennedy committed suicide while in the motorcade at Dallas. So who's to say that we aren't that universe? Perhaps that's why the CIA was so weird about it. Because at the height of this political turmoil with Russia, how awful does it look if a leader commits suicide? What if, as Lee Harvey Oswald said, he was the patsy because they needed an excuse? What if the pressure of being the leader of one of the world's superpowers was too much for JFK and he couldn't take it anymore? And what if he wanted to go out during a parade with the whole world watching? That, or he just ran a really long string, like from the car up to the window, and then just was really good at timing. And the best thing about quantum suicide and immortality, that had to happen somewhere, might as well be here. And you literally can't fight me on it, because that's how the theory works. Everything that can happen happens somewhere. So here it is. And if anyone's in the comments calling me stupid for it, well, guess what? They work for the CIA.
That's what I like about like string theory and all these theories, because I'm like, cause you can just make the funniest claims and just be like, nobody can fight me on it, because to be fair, in another reality, dragons exist. Who the fuck's gonna tell me that's not true? I love it.
See, it's that easy. I love my job. Mao statues for Rapa Nuians, which I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. Again, sorry. Which these statues are the technical name for the commonly known Easter Island statues. See, once the first...
Want to know the weird thing I heard about these, and I'll see if he gets into them? I don't know what Moaya statues were Rapa Nuians. I'm not sure what the fuck the Rapa Nuians is, but I'm sure Wendigoon is going to give me the tell. Someone had a theory that these were built and put there to these were built and put there to make it look like these are ancient statues, but they're not. Something like that. Something along the lines of that. That's the only thing I ever heard about these statues.
First settlers of the industrialized world arrived at...
I don't know if that's true. Don't quote me. Like I said, in another reality, that could be true. I can't laugh too hard or I'm going to start coughing. Oh, man. That's too funny. That is too funny. Oh, shoot. Here we go.
At Easter Island, these statues were already in place. According to the mythology of the people, this was statues to commemorate the Rapa Nuians, or the original founders of the island itself. However, there are theories circulating that these old original founders of the island died and were set in their place as the statues. Now, while most normies would take this to mean that the statues were built on top of the Rapa Nuians' gravesite, or perhaps their land, cool people believe that perhaps these statues aren't statues at all, and are quite literally the fossilized remains of these first people. Or, in other words, giants. So the Easter Island statues are frozen giants, and just like
glad I don't have headphones.
JFK shooting himself, you cannot tell me I'm wrong. Math Hacker has to do more with
Did he just do the same thing I did?
giants, and just like JFK shooting himself, you cannot tell me I'm wrong.
Boom, look at that.
Hacker has to do more with an overarching theory with numbers as they exist in the known universe. Because when you think about it, numbers are really amazing in the fact that they can be used to quantify every known occurrence within the known universe. Or the fact we can do things like make equations to figure out how the speed of light interacts with blah 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 or whatever. What this theory is saying is that perhaps through the use of numbers, one could gain the ability...
Shout out to my girlfriend, she's a math brain.
In order to manipulate reality itself. Or in other words, the secrets of the universe, or the secrets of the simulation we're in, as some would say with this theory, because there's another bigger theory that numbers are the lines of code that exist in our computer, but that's for another day. Math could be used to hack the universe, basically. Real meaning of hybrid RPG was so weird to find information on. So it was a role-playing game called Hybrid that was canceled in 2002. The only existing text file of it is a rule set that the author says is roughly 30% completed at the time of the cancellation. Reading through this thing, not only is it absolutely massive, but it just seems like sort of insane ravings. Like, for example, there are over 500 rules, and the rules are really weird, and they cross-reference each other, so while you're reading one rule, you have to scroll down to like 278, and then that rule is just some talk about how politics works. So then you go back up to 3, and then it says you have to jump down to 400, and the whole thing kind of works like that. Several of the rules are just very long equations for things like how gravity interacts in a sphere and really weird specific stuff. However, what leads to interest are some of the references that are made throughout the rule sheet. Like, for example, one part, the author begins talking about the Matrix and how important it is to understand the walls of the simulation you're within. That goes back to the theory that the real meaning of the hybrid RPG was to create a rule set for the world we exist in, or to create a rule set for a simulation of the world we exist in, or we're the simulation and these are some of the rules for where we exist.
That is so many things. You know what I'm gonna just take right now and still co-sign it with is, you know what? We'll talk about it at the end of this.
Would explain the talk of politics. That would explain why the Matrix and ideas of a simulation were brought up, and why equations for how gravity works and very specific concepts of physics kept being brought up. The idea being that this RPG itself was perhaps a look through the cracks at what our reality actually is, or a warning to us of what our reality actually is. Deep soy is closely related to the weaponized femboy thing I talked about in the last tier. So in that theory, it was the idea that soy is used on other countries as a means of immobilizing their masculine population. Whereas deep soy is saying that perhaps the government would do that same thing to their own people. The idea being that higher ups have implanted this idea of societal laziness. Or in other words, everything is about looking at a screen, sitting down and doing nothing, and letting other people take care of issues for you. And according to the theory, this leads to everything from obesity rates going through the roof and a reliance on law enforcement, as well as a trust of elected officials. Or in other words, people want someone else to take care of the problems because they themselves have been taught to not take care of their own problems. So the idea of deep soy is perhaps governments are immobilizing their people as either a means of just putting domination over them or preparation for some final step of some kind. My money's on the weaponized femboys thing, but I guess we'll have to find out. I don't know if I can say this word on YouTube. Probably not. So the Tibetan prostitution stocks refers to the rampant rates of prostitution that exist within the region of Tibet. So Tibet politics is weird. Pretty much China tells them what to do and Tibet's not happy about it, or at least from all the research I've done, that seems to be the case. So prostitution's illegal in China, but Tibet does not care. To put it into perspective, prostitution is so rampant in some parts of Tibet that in some of the cities I was reading about, 10% of the women are involved in prostitution, which 10% itself may not seem like a lot. But think if any city that you're familiar with had 10% of the people as prostitutes, what that would mean not only for the economy, but of the societal rings around it. Now, again, it's illegal, so all of these are officially done as massage parlors and day spas and other stuff that we all actually know what's going on. So in that whole 10% thing, that's 10% of places where it's a known fact that it's a prostitution ring, which means the actual number is probably higher. So the whole theory around it is, we know that elitist circles and governments like to do not so nice things to people that don't deserve. I'm talking about the Epstein stuff. So the idea being that perhaps China knows that it's such a rampant problem in Tibet, but lets it go because it's a means of appeasing their world clientele that they host in this disgusting way. Or in other words, China doesn't do anything about it because powerful, important people in the world doesn't want anything to be done about it. After that last one, this is where I clarify that this is a YouTube channel. I am only making jokes. None of these are serious. And hopefully, yeah, we're talking about a weird one next, so that it's fine. It's just jokes. Haha, jokes.
Before we continue to that one, I would like to just clarify that I'm just a YouTube channel watching another YouTube channel. I started to fuck up there because I started laughing. And I'm making jokes as well. Here we go.
Fire is alive is a concept that fire itself is alive.
Living?
For one, think about our concepts of what constitutes life and how many of them fire is in line with. It reproduces. It grows on its own. It maintains a homeostasis thermal temperature to itself. It moves on its own. And it eats and excretes on its own as well. Really, the only thing that it doesn't have in common with understood life is that it's not made up of cells. But as we've talked about earlier on this chart, perhaps something doesn't need to be made up of cells or carbon-based in order to exist. In other words, concepts of energy beings or supernatural things from another dimension that simply pierce through the veil occasionally as energy creatures can be seen with fire itself. Or at the very least, perhaps how plasma is formed within fire and is a constantly replicating energy source that could be the secret to other forms of life outside of our understanding. Eating food makes you age, while this is apparent on the chart, is technically true because if you don't eat, you'll die, which means you won't get any older. So, checkmate, atheist. I mean, technically, like, aging is caused by telomeres being cut in the body as someone continues to not die. And technically, the energy that is used from ATP in order to cut these telomeres comes from food. So, I mean, kind of, sort of. But again, the alternative is you die. So, you know, pick and choose, I guess. Antarctica Preverification is simply saying that the conversation around Antarctica is often kind of weird. Specifically, the way that organizations cover up stuff about Antarctica is odd. Like, for example, there were satellite images of what appeared to be a pyramid that was seen in Antarctica from a satellite, to which the governments collectively all at once went, oh, it's a mountain. Yeah, it's a mountain. So then someone pointed out that there was another pyramid that was very similarly shaped nearby, and they're like, yeah, that one's a mountain too. It's just mountains. Don't look at the pictures anymore. And if you're familiar with a lot of the hunts for Hitler that happened after World War II, all of the public questioning of U-boats potentially making their way towards Antarctica was shut up immediately and no one looked into it. Just look at Operation High Jump, which I also talked about in Tier 2 for an example of that. And then you start looking at all the cave systems that may exist underneath Antarctica because of the way poles work, and that if the Earth's a magnetic field, then it makes sense that there would be more of a rift of the rock in Antarctica. And then keep in mind that governments just keep on saying that it's a totally desolate wasteland. It's just hundreds and thousands of miles of ice and there's nothing more to look at.
Nothing more to look at.
Nothing. And then realize,
I always think that is the most comical fucking thing about Antarctica, is that they just say it's a complete fucking wasteland. So think about that for yourself.
that after World War II, the Antarctica Treaty was made, which is an organization of governments that say no normal people can go to the island without government approval. I use island loosely. This thing's like one of the largest continents on the planet. And all the other misdirection and weird secrets that have to do with it. And it makes you wonder. And the more research I do about all this crazy stuff, the more I realize, maybe all those textbooks that I've read that have said the Earth is just a solid ball and there's nothing underneath it besides us are really dumb. Because if you've ever looked at like a porous rock that is full of holes because it has water and stuff on it, and then you think that the Earth is just a giant composite rock with 75% water all over it, and then you think that I'm sure there's nothing beneath us, it's just straight solid rock and everything that the government tells us is true, and there's definitely not giants underneath, and I am going off the deep end. All right, back to it. 1800s technology.
He said, I'm going off the deep end, back to it.
While vague, there are some really crazy concepts in it. See, in the early 1800s, before we discovered how cool electricity was, technology was going a whole other direction. Like, for example, in the early 1800s, there was a prototype for something known as prana rays, which were essentially sunglasses that, when put on, would supposedly show you the aura of the person you were looking at. Combine that with concepts that in dowsing, there were these special rods that, when held in the air, would bend in the direction of water underneath the earth. And it makes you think of, if it wasn't for electricity and the modern conveniences we have, where technology would have gone in the more
Man, there's so much I want to say about this, but honestly, I'm gonna just let it pass.
Spiritual
But you know what I will say? There's weird evidence for things existing when they shouldn't have.
direction. Door dogs are a
Yeah.
legend that originates in Africa,
Door dogs.
which essentially says that whenever someone is about to die, as they're passing through a doorway, a small dog can be seen with them. In every case, the person who is about to die cannot see the dogs themselves. A lot of the first-hand accounts I read were really interesting. Like, for example, there was a European hunter who was in Africa for a while and spoke with several of the locals about the legends of these door dogs, and he himself, while riding, was fearful because earlier that week, when passing through a doorway, a young child asked what the dog was next to him, and of course he couldn't see the dog. To which shortly afterwards, the guy writing this story died. So that's not weird at all. And while the concept of it may be scary, in most traditions I read, it seems as if this is seen as not necessarily a good thing, but a peaceful thing, as if the small dog is a sort of guide or comfort to pass you on into the next life. One worldness has to do with a concept of analyzing humanity itself. Essentially, think of it this way. A lot of the times we look at certain empires that have risen and fallen, or certain groups of people that have gone through trouble, and we see that as an isolated incident, whereas one worldness is saying they are all parts or individuals in the actual experiment that's happening, which is the world. Or in other words, all occurrences that have ever happened are part of one continuous string that we are still.
Okay, about the door dogs, that shit was kind of crazy. Damn. The door dogs was kind of crazy. Well, guess I'm going to go through every single door and ask people if they see a dog.
Still on, which would mean that no real change or learned behavior from the previous examples is possible, or the whole those who forget history are doomed to repeat it is sort of an inevitable conclusion, as we're going to repeat the same thing over and over because we're still all part of the same experiment, which all ties back into simulation theory again, because perhaps we were all set up as this program in a computer in order to see what the results of all this would be. I mean, look at me. I'm fake. I'm in a box right now behind a screen talking to you about how you're actually behind a screen.
True. And then I'm behind a screen, and this is about to get super weird, but then I'm behind a screen watching him behind a screen, and now you're behind a screen watching me behind a screen.
Isn't that just weird? I'm probably fake. You don't know. I may not even be real. See this coffee cup? This isn't real either. Every time the Giants or Hollow Earth comes up in one of these videos, I'm just so weird for the rest of it.
Yo, I feel him. Every time someone brings up simulation or wants to get deep in a conversation thinking that they can handle it, man, I go to astronomical levels of fucking freaking them out. Because I'm like, if you're going to pull up simulation theory or things like that and just in general, it's like, bro, we can all be on somebody's, like, you know, the whole dollhouse thing. We could all be like on a Monopoly game board right now. Like, we could all be inside of like somebody's app in a cosmic McDonald's, like in the back shelf, just like waiting. Like they left their phone there or something, and we're just, I don't know what happens on the shift. I don't even fucking know. Like, we could literally be in a storybook. We could be on someone's painting on a wall, and we're just the reality inside the painting on the wall. And like, once they ask the question, I imagine if this world was real, this world we call Earth, and we're just Earth in the painting, and just their thought of imagining that world could exist, it sparked our Earth to become a real universe inside a universe. Yeah, okay, I'm getting too far.
This gateway refers to the Fukushima reactor disaster that happened on March 11th of 2011. For those that don't know, Fukushima was a large nuclear power plant in Japan that an earthquake and tsunami destroyed the plant and almost caused a super bad nuclear meltdown. The historical story is very interesting. Short version, essentially what happened is they needed a way to cool down the reactor really fast, and all of the power supplies and all the fail safes had gone bad because of the earthquake and tsunami. So the solution was they just knocked the thing down and had ocean water pour over it as a means of cooling it down so there wouldn't be a like super nuke disaster, which worked. However, the theory is the energy that was released, because there was a lot of radioactive energy released at once, was enough to open up a portal or gateway. This all goes back into the idea that we can't perceive dimensions around us, and as a means to break into these other dimensions, it would take a lot of energy, say a nuclear reactor. So this theory goes a step further and says perhaps the disaster was purposeful, and that's why every single security or failsafe system went down, because someone had sabotaged it.
Shit, if you believe in everything happens for a reason, then technically, right?
And perhaps either someone crossed over to another dimension or something from the other dimension came here. Which honestly, if you think about it, has anything been normal since 2011? That's what I thought. Lottery exists to catch time travelers. Yeah, this one's fun though. I like the idea that there's an agency in the future that time traveling is such a problem. They're like, oh, we'll go back in time and make there be a lot of money. And then it's just like bear traps set up for people who go back in time. But yeah, this one's fun. I like it. Whatever. Psyops don't exist is referring to psychological operations. This could have a lot of different definitions. However, the most common one is the idea of sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. In other words, it's like this. Say that I tell you about the Illuminati, and I say that there's this super evil group of people who work in world governments. And then you get really worried about the Illuminati. So you get all your rich super elitist friends together and say that you all have to go proliferate world governments to make sure nothing bad happens. Which means, because of me telling you that and you trying to react to it, you have created the thing that you were afraid of.
Oh, that you were afraid of.
In other words, paranoia of what might go wrong causes things to actually go wrong. And there's no fake story.
Exactly, because what can go wrong will go wrong. Basically is like the whole, I don't want to say the whole joke of positive thought, but the whole gist of literally just control your mind, because you are creating a lot of shit in your mind. The imagination is powerful. There's a reason they try to program it out of you as a kid. Then you stop daydreaming. I'm gonna put this light on. I think we were doing good, but I feel like there's someone watching that was just like, let's keep it off, and the light's coming in from the window. So
stories that exist if people just keep making them boogeyman that they're afraid of. Vertical universe is the counterpoint to a horizontal universe. So say that we're moving through time and existence and everything's kind of flat, like we can move from it side to side. What if it's actually vertical? Or in other words, we are moving in a directly straight line with the existence above us and below us, something that we can't really reach. While this kind of falls in line,
that I'm not gonna lie, this one seems fucking cool.
And with a very narrow existence of the universe, as some physicists think that we are in, you could take it a step further and say perhaps ideas of deities and demons are just people in either the future or past who have mastered a way to get to the higher or lower planes of existence. Or kind of the concept we exist as we're walking through a very long skyscraper, and some people have figured out to go to different floors. Prophecies Enforcing Agency is...
Whoa, that one sounds clean.
The idea that there are organizations throughout history whose sole purpose is to make sure that prophecies come true. A lot of these theories relate back to the Bible, and specifically the predictions of Revelation that there will be a government in this place and a government doing this, and then this will happen as in line with the end times. And perhaps organizations like the Illuminati or the Freemasons are simply existing behind the scenes to make sure things go to plan. And then I guess it would depend on if these predictions are good or bad, if things like the Illuminati or the Freemasons would be good or bad. And if you look at some of the predictions from the Bible, some of those things are eerily true. So perhaps...
Oh, I gotta reference my man B.O.B. in a song he just did. Is it really self-prediction if they wrote the whole plot? Who's behind the mask? It could be bots at the top. The invasion already happened. The bodies are already swapped. Okay, I don't want to... I want to keep referencing the song, but I want to say all the lyrics. It's a really good album called Artificial Intelligence. This is a shameless promotion, but if you like stuff like this, his album will blow your mind. Just gonna say that right now. But see, that just made me think about this, because it's like, of course things in the Bible are eerily like, because it's almost like it's almost like when the Simpsons or Family Guy predict something and people are like, oh, how do they know? I'm like, isn't it obvious that it's kind of... Can I say that in the video? What I was about to finish the sentence with? Nah, let me not. Let's just keep going.
There are secret people behind the scenes.
There's a possibility in a parallel universe, not saying this one, that all this stuff is planned. Wink, wink. Okay, I'm done.
Making sure that everything stays according.
You guys are bringing out the real me in this, in watching these videos, man. Because I would never say this over a video if it was not this type of video.
Higher plan. Consciousness beamed from Moonbase. Okay. A lot of these theories go back to the whole idea of prison Earth, or the idea that we are not native to this planet, and that the moon itself is sort of existent.
I mean, come on. I mean, half of us know we're not from Earth. Come on. We originated here. Nah, some of us definitely incarnated here to learn some lessons and get the fuck out of here. I'm just saying that right now.
As our warden. So our consciousness and our understanding are regulated to make sure we don't get outside of our means of containment. And this also can be in relation to the commonly thought question of what comes first, thought or language. Because some people consider it to be impossible to have thought without language. But like, what do you think people who have never heard a language do? Just don't think. So perhaps these...
I believe thought is first. Divine thought.
Greater overlords that have us in prison here aren't just monitoring where we go or what we do, but also how we think. Penergic Men, or Penergic people, is in reference to special people who have existed throughout history. See, the word Penergic itself basically means multiple skills.
My bad about Penergic Men. I always say divine thought, but I just call it divine because it's easily, you'll like reference either God or whatever you believe in for the thought, but it could be thought like the thoughts.
Or someone that can accomplish several tasks. And it's basically saying that people throughout history who have accomplished tremendous feats, which is everything from empires to technological advances, are in themselves a higher order of person. And most of the theories of this also go back to simulation theory and say that perhaps every time that we become stagnant within our simulation, a certain character is deposited, even without them knowing it, as a means to cause people to move or to cause events to happen. Or in other words, protagonists are randomly set up throughout human history as a means of keeping the story interesting. And that is it for part 1 of Tier 8 of the Conspiracy Theory Iceberg. Thank you all so much for being here with me and sticking through this. It really does mean the most. Thank you all for watching.
That was good. That one was good. And yeah, shout out to Wendigoon again. Shout out to all of you for sticking through this super long video, 46 minutes. Oh, it's been a good thing. If you wonder what I'm saying about, or what I would say, maybe there's a few of these that you want to hear more about. Always don't be afraid to put them down in the comments of like things you probably want me to touch on or like research for myself. And honestly, I'm not even going to lie. I feel like that would be a great thing to put on Patreon, like to talk about some of these where like on YouTube it's like like, but the whole Penergic Men thing, I think that could be the same for women also. Don't want to just say it's Penergic Men, but and that's just me, not like some fucking whatever the fuck you call it. Oh damn, I was about to go on a whole rant right there. But I think that everyone kind of has that in them that could rise up to being what would be considered a Penergic Man. Like, you never know who's a Penergic Man in the making. That's kind of how I see it like that. I mean, I can't get deep because I have to pull in the things like my research to kind of explain it a little bit more. But all right, other than that, I'm out of here. Much love and moonlight to y'all, and I will see y'all in the next video. Peace.